Hey, this is Erica Terry, the host of the Teacher Goals podcast. Super excited about our episode tonight. We have Cassie Tabrizi from Creatabilities, and she is going to be sharing with us some independent reading comprehension strategies. So we are continuing our conversation about developing reading skills from last week. So I am super excited to dive into this conversation with her. And so excited to be able to spend some time with you guys tonight. So I want to know, as always, who do we have in the house tonight? Thank you so much for joining us for the Teacher Goals podcast. We appreciate you. And so I want to know, who do we have? Tell me where you're from, what your role is in education. And I am going to be pulling it up and looking at those comments. And while you are putting in and saying hello, I wanted to remind you of our free conference that is coming up. I cannot believe that we are like 2 weeks away from the Teacher Goals Conference. And so I want to make sure I share that information with you. You can register and get your free ticket right now at teachergoals.com/conference. It is going to be a 2-day event. The entire live event is absolutely free. You will get access to over 30 presentations, some dynamic keynote speakers, 2 comedy shows, one on Friday night, one on Saturday night, and then so many resources. The digital swag bag is like crazy. So you definitely want to join us. I am super excited about it and hope to see you there. And so I see some comments coming in. I want to say hello to Michelle from Oregon. Thank you so much for joining us. Carolyn, hello. Thank you for joining us. We have Tamiko, who's from Detroit and works for Job Corps. So thank you for joining us from Detroit. We are so happy to have you. Terry, a 3rd grade teacher from Campbell, Missouri. Thank you for joining us. Yvette from Texas. She is the center director of a tutoring center. So welcome. Super excited to have you with us. We have Kenny from Peru. Thank you for joining us today, Kenny. We have a user whose name I can't see, but it's coming from Alabama. So hello, down south here with me. I am the next state over in Georgia. So glad to see you. Alexandra is going to be teaching Spanish soon on OutSchool and also just apply on Cambly Kids. So thank you for joining us so much, Alexandra. We have Gina from California, a 3rd grade teacher. We are so excited that you are here with us. I see Nadrea from North Carolina. Hello, welcome. We have Jessica here from Texas, who is an academic instructor at the prisons. And then we have, I love my special educators. So I had to pull up Dabs, who is from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm so excited to see a parent with us tonight, Prima from Bel Air, Texas. So excited to see you here. Thank you all for joining us. I am so happy that you are here with us tonight. Just in case this is your first time joining us for the Teacher Goals podcast, I want to share with you the format that we use. So I'm going to be bringing Cassie up in a minute, and I will do my normal interview that I do that will be, put on our podcast networks. And so if you haven't already subscribed to the Teacher Goals podcast on your favorite platform, we're on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we are there. So definitely make sure you subscribe and review if you're loving this experience. But at the end of the interview, you have the opportunity to ask her any question. And so you want to make sure that if you think of a question throughout the interview or something comes to mind, go ahead and put it in the chat box because I will pull that up immediately following the interview, and she will be answering your questions. So I want to make sure that you stay on to the very end and get those questions answered. And so while I was sharing that format, I did notice a few more people come up, so I'm going to pull them up, and then we're going to go ahead and bring Cassie on and get started. And so we have Kat, who is a teaching assistant in Hampshire, England. Hello, welcome. We have Kenny, who's an enthusiastic and motivating English language teacher. Love that. We have Dana here from Alberta, Canada, who teaches grade 6. And then Michelle here from teaching online multiple subjects as well as ESL. So thank you all so much for joining us. I am so thankful that you decided to spend your Thursday evening with us. And once again, I am Erica Terry from Healthy Wealthy Educators. And so with us tonight, we are going to be diving deep into strategies. So if you were with us last week, we talked about strategies that you can use to help your students or your children. We have a parent here tonight, become independent readers. So we are going to continue this literacy conversation tonight with Cassie Tabrizi from Creatabilities, and she's going to be sharing with us some specific strategies that you can use to help your students develop those reading comprehension skills. And so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bring her up right now.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. My dog just burst into the room. Sorry.
No problem. We love our little furry friends here. So glad to have you on with us tonight. How are you? How's everything going?
I am great. I am neck deep in reading comprehension research and loving it, even though that's kind of weird. But yeah, things are going great.
Love it, love it. And we are going to be hearing all about that research tonight and, get some strategies that we can actually implement with our students. So I'm super excited about that. But before we dive into all of the nuggets that I'm sure you're going to share tonight, I want to start off with you just telling us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for those people who don't know, my name is Cassie Tabrizi, like she said, and I was an elementary school teacher. I taught 3rd grade. I also taught preschool. I don't know if it is in the same category, but I taught 3rd grade and was starting to just make a lot of things for my classroom. My master's degree is in curriculum and instructional design. And I just was creating, and a fellow teacher said, "Hey, have you heard of Teachers Pay Teachers?" And I was like, "No." But she's like, "You should start posting on there." So I started creating resources for TPT, and that has led into consulting and research and webinars and blogs and videos and a podcast. And I just get to continue doing what I love to do, which is helping fellow educators find the best resources out there and really meet their needs, because as the ones in the trenches, they're so overwhelmed and there's so much that's getting demanded of them, especially the last couple of years, that I just love to be able to synthesize the information and bring it all to them so they have it ready to go.
Love it, love it. So are there, and if you have not been on her website, so I have, and it is like when she says she really creates and synthesizes that information, it is so true. And so can you just share an example of something, like, I could shout something out that caught my attention, but can you share an example of like a research or a resource that you have created recently that they could find just by visiting Creatability, something that you did some research on and was able to synthesize it and they can use in the classroom? Like, what can they expect from you?
Oh man, if they want actual printable resources, they can go to Creatabilities on TPT. I have a bunch of freebies on there. I have a lot, like right now, what's big is Black History Month resources, or next month is Women's History Month resources. So just being able to read passages about important people throughout history and then get kids writing about it, and that's building their awareness, and it's also building their background knowledge, which both research has shown just is incredible for reading comprehension, specifically giving them a chance to write about it. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff on growth mindset. There's stuff for literacy centers and small group reading, just trying to follow the best practices that are out there.
Love it. And you already started kind of hinting at some of the best practices when we talk specifically about reading comprehension. And so take us from like intro to, reading comprehension. Me as a former high school teacher, I don't know anything really about teaching reading or the principles behind teaching reading. So when we talk specifically about reading comprehension, like just make it plain and simple for me. What are we talking about and how the heck do you teach that?
Okay, great question. So when I'm talking about reading comprehension, I'm not talking about the primary skills of, phonics, phonemic awareness, decoding, mapping, all of that. I'm talking about being able to read complex, rich text and understand what you are reading, and then being able to build a base of knowledge that you can then take with you to help keep building that schemata as students go through the grade. And I'm going to be completely frank that when I was teaching reading comprehension, I was doing it wrong. I did it in the way that I was taught. I did it in the way that I saw others teach. And I have really come to learn that I was not doing it in the right way.
Okay. So I don't want to cut you off, but
Cut
you
me off.
cannot say I was doing it wrong and then not tell us like what were you doing?
Oh, yeah.
And not only what were you doing, like when you recognized you were doing it wrong, like what inspires you to say, okay, I've been doing this the wrong way. And not only am I going to learn how to do it the right way, but I'm going to teach other people how to do that as well. Kind of share your story.
Yeah. So I was doing it, which I think is still pretty standard. You teach skills in isolation. And when I say skills, I'm talking about summarizing, asking questions, predicting, making visualizations, all of those things. And you would do a mini lesson on them, and then you would take it to guided reading maybe and practice it on different books. And you would spend 1 to 2 weeks on it and then move on to a different skill. And the kids might be able to do that skill on that particular graphic organizer, but I started to realize, okay, I don't really think that they can transfer these skills, and they're not really understanding as we're trying to get into more and more complex text, which is what the core really is pushing. And it's just not working. But I thought, okay, maybe it's just me. I'm going to keep trying. So you kind of double down, you do the PowerPoints and you do the groups and you let them talk about the skills. But the fact is, they are if you know Dr. Doug Fisher and Dr. Nancy Fry, they wrote a book about it, and they call it fossilized skill instruction. So we are isolating these skills, and kids can maybe fill out pages on predicting when you're talking about that skill. But then if you're asking them to do it 3 months later on their book and guided reading, they might not remember what it is. They might not know how to do it. And so just honestly, what got me onto this path and realizing, oh, I'm not doing this right. I'm not teaching other teachers how to do this right. Because I have a whole webinar I did on reading comprehension, trying to teach people how I did it, because that's what I thought was best practice.
Right.
And it wasn't. It was actually, I saw some things online and I started researching, and that through my podcast, which is called After the Bell, I was interviewing some of these researchers, and they just started talking about reading comprehension and how the brain works. And I realized, oh no, oh crap, that's not good. And I just started to rethink my practices and rethink how I was training other teachers. Is that too wordy? You can cut me off.
No, I'm not cutting you off at all because now that we are thinking, okay, you started to rethink your practices, you started to do things differently. Kind of share with us, like, what strategies did you start using that were able to empower students with these reading comprehension skills?
The first thing that you need to know with reading comprehension is reading comprehension begins with listening comprehension, which you kind of doesn't make sense at first. But even when you're reading, you're, reading an article, you're reading a book, you're hearing the words, you're saying them in your head, or you're reading out loud. And so you want to start by making sure that students are understanding just the semantics of English language, that they're speaking with each other, that they're talking with you, that they can ask and answer questions. So you can even start by reading aloud. And teachers have been doing this for a long time, but lower grades and upper grades, reading aloud rich text. And when I say a rich text, I don't mean it has to be a big textbook or a big chapter book every time. Just something with beautiful word choice, something with beautiful pictures, maybe, that really is a good jumping off point for discussion. I don't know if you've ever read The Other Side by Jacqueline Woodson, or like that's a really good picture book to use if you're looking for a picture book,
Mm-hmm.
or anything by Patricia Polacco, but just giving them a chance to hear something, because research has shown that kids can, understand more than they can read, like harder text, harder vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
and then giving them a chance to talk about it with you, and talk about it with each other.
I
And
love.
oh, sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
I get passionate and then I start rambling about it. So once they're listening comprehension really
Mm-hmm.
is, you feel solid, then you need to not do what I did, which was jump from story to story and book to book. You really want to spend 2 to 4 weeks on units of study, because what has been found time and time and time again is that a student's level of background knowledge and their understanding of vocabulary is what predicts their reading comprehension success, all the way from elementary up through college. And what we're doing with all of these reading programs, and sometimes we're forced to do them. It's not like teachers are like, oh, I want to use a basal. Yeah, that sounds super fun and not boring at all. But we're jumping, okay, we're going to do this story this one week
Mm-hmm.
on friendship. And then we're going to talk about this story that's a fantasy next week. And then the week after, we're going to talk about maybe a nonfiction piece on the moon. And we're not spending enough time doing a deep dive onto or into units of study to build that foundation of background knowledge, of content, and of vocabulary.
I love it. So really the change is starting with the listening component, but then taking a deep dive versus moving around from skipping around from book to book to book.
Right.
And so then when teachers actually implement and teach the way that you're describing right now, like, what are some of the goals that they're able to achieve by applying these principles?
One, they can cut down on their workload, because if you're doing guided reading where you're constantly in 4 different books with 4 different groups, and then you're doing a different read aloud, and then you're doing a reading program on top of that, that is a lot of material to stay on top of.
Mm-hmm.
And one goal is just streamlining your work,
Mm-hmm.
doing a unit on a novel that you love or a topic that you love. Maybe you want to talk about the Civil War or magnets or, national monuments or whatever it is. You're just being able to laser focus on one unit, get everything in place for that unit, and be able to implement it without scrambling like, oh, what page are they on? And what are we talking about? And have I read this book? And where am I going? So that's one.
Mm-hmm.
And then on
That's
the,
a biggie.
yeah,
That's a biggie.
and because I know with me, like, as a teacher, you read a ton of children's books, or you probably like young adult fiction too, and nonfiction. But you still have to keep track of, okay, this group is on chapter 20 of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This group's on Fantastic Mr. Fox. This group's on the Moon Book. And it's just a lot of mental energy. And so if you're focusing down, you're narrowing your focus, you're going to feel like some of that work is taken off your plate, even though you're still accomplishing the same things.
Right, right.
But the goal on the student side is that if you start to build the knowledge, the background knowledge with your students, they are going to be able to read more complex text. They're going to be able to have more in-depth discussions, and they're going to be able to make connections and learn faster and deeper in ways that they couldn't before. And that is so incredibly powerful when we just are seeing reading scores do nothing but decline.
Mm-hmm. That is very, very powerful. And so we know with all good things comes challenges. And so when you think about especially making this shift for a teacher, that has been doing these groups and everything you described, and they're listening and they're like so inspired and they're like, okay, I am going to try to teach, with these units of studies, like what challenges do they tend to face? And then how are they able to overcome those challenges?
Well, you're always going to have kids with different levels of background knowledge and different skill sets. And so that's automatically a challenge. Because we can't control what our kids come into the room with, obviously, and what they're getting at home or what their prior educational experience has been. And that's probably one of the biggest ones, is that you're going to have such a variety of needs. You might be teaching 5th grade, but still have kids who need the phonemic awareness piece. Right. Or you'll have kids that are reading on a high school level and they're all in the same classroom, and you're the one person in there that's supposed to be able to teach all of them and make them progress. So that is a huge challenge. And one easy way that you can meet that is using text sets, which is just having different levels of text, but it's on the same topic. So if you're focused on that unit of study, say, I'm going to say magnets, then you can have different reading passages for the different levels, but they're still getting all of the vocabulary, and they're getting the background knowledge, and they're getting, the content that they need to start helping them make those connections.
Awesome. Awesome. And so then any other advice, any tips, like those last pieces of advice, pieces of wisdom that you want to share with, teachers, or we have parents here tonight, that are really trying to help their children or students with develop these reading comprehension skills?
I would say don't shy away from topics because you think that kids are too young for them. If you have read Natalie Wexler's book called The Knowledge Gap, she talks about observing 2nd grade classrooms in DC, and they were doing units on ancient Greece and Rome. And then they talked about the Civil War, and then they moved on to the Revolutionary War. And at first, my first thought was, well, that's not their core. The Revolutionary War, Civil War, that's 5th grade. And that's not appropriate. They're 7. They should be talking about family. But they're finding that, one, the kids can handle talking about those topics because you can do it in an age appropriate way. But they also love talking about it. It's something real. It's something that actually happened. There's a lot of facts and realia and pictures and information on it. And they get tired of just talking about families and friendship and love. They want something real and meaningful. Right. And they can handle it.
Love it. Love it. So thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom, so much knowledge, and so many strategies with us tonight. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
I am on Creatabilities. That's 2 words with a hyphen. I set up that name a long time ago, and I would not do it with a hyphen now, but whatever. It's just create-abilities. And you can go to creatabilities.com, Creatabilities on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Teachers Pay Teachers.
I love it. It's so funny. The lessons we learn as we, enter this entrepreneurial world where you
Yeah,
start, like you learn so much on this journey. So that's funny. I love it. But thank you so much for joining us.
of
I
course.
appreciate it. And this was great. And as always, we are going to dive right into our Q&A section. I did see some good comments coming up while you were speaking. The first one I noticed, Michelle, when you were talking about how you were doing it wrong and then realized it and had to make that shift. Michelle chimed right in and said she had to do the same thing, recognize that methods were not working, and then scaffolded skills outside of the curriculum in order to help, build critical thinking skills. So, any suggestions or any feedback on someone that may have this feeling like, even if you're not doing it wrong, like there's probably a better way to do it? Like, how should they dive into that work?
I would say because there's so much that they have to be aware of, pick one thing that they want to change and work on that or change or implement until it becomes a habit and not overwhelming.
I love it.
So maybe it's using text sets, or maybe it's teaching with one unit, or maybe it's changing how you're doing guided reading and not using leveled readers or whatever.
Mhm.
And whatever your focus wants to be, focusing on critical thinking skills, work that in and then add something else. That way you're not getting overwhelmed, but you're still making progress to where you want to be.
Love that. Great advice. And so Renee made the comment. First of all, thanks for this. Absolutely loved the tips and strategies that you were sharing. But she says, teaching reading to third graders who hate reading. Any advice for her in this situation? Like, you're teaching reading and the students just seem to hate it. What should
I
someone
know. And
do?
that's so sad. I understand it. I understand why they might hate it. They probably view themselves as they're not good at it, or they just find it boring. And that's what I mean when I say bring in real things from the world. It can be current events, even that's happening, or past events, science, something that's tangible, that's going to be highly motivating to them. And if it's a group or even one a kid who's like, I hate reading, I don't like this, I'm not good at it, or it's boring, let them give you a topic and then let's do a deep dive unit on that. Because if they're interested in it, then they're going to be reading because of their motivation and their interest in the topic. And then they'll be like, oh my gosh, look at what I just accomplished. Look at how much I read. Look at how much I understood. I can even
Right.
present to the class, and just get them involved. And that should increase their motivation. But it's hard because some kids, they view reading as just so tedious, and it's not.
Love that advice. And then, last but certainly not least, Kim has shared that this is very informative because teaching has changed so much that it can be difficult for me to help my granddaughter. And I know we had parents on tonight. So, any advice for those parents that may be helping their children learn how to read at home? Like, what can they do in this process?
Take your kids to the library and get them to read a wide variety of books, not just fiction. Make sure you're including nonfiction in there as well. And it can be social studies, it can be world history, it can be science, whatever it is. Let them pick them out, read them together, and talk about it. It's the best thing you can do.
I love it. Thank you so much. Great tips, strategies, and our founder of Teacher Goals, Brad, has reminded us that Cassie is going to be presenting at our free virtual conference. And so, if you have enjoyed the strategies that you got tonight, you want some more, then definitely join us March 11th and 12th. You can register right on this website, teachergoals.com/conference. And we look forward to seeing you there. Great raffle. It's going to be so much happening at that conference. It's going to be so much fun. I'm super excited about it. Glad that Cassie's going to be joining us there. I am so thankful for each one of you all joining us tonight. I hope that you will join us at the conference as well. And as always, we will be right back here next week, next Thursday at 7 p.m. And we have a special guest, super excited. And so make sure you join us back next Thursday, 7 p.m. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we will see you all next week. Have a great night.
Bye, guys.